Okay, let's make a start. So yeah, thank you for joining this webinar this morning. I'm going to be talking about the top 10 website trends to look out for in 2022. So just before we begin, just so you know, we're recording this webinar in order that we can send you a copy of that recording afterwards. So you should receive a copy of this hopefully later this week, so it won't be too long to turn that around. And also please get involved in the conversation. So at Webbox Digital on any social media channel, using the hashtag Webbox. It'd be great to have your feedback from today's session and yeah, kind of just create that conversation. Little intro to myself. So my name is Will. I'm the founder of a digital agency called Webbox. I founded it back in 2008. And since then, we've been working with brands such as Fevertree, the NHS, Airbus, DS Smith, and St John Ambulance, to name a few, to help them on website projects and paid ad campaigns. Genuinely love what I do, hence why I speak on these topics frequently. And I love working alongside businesses and organizations to help them define their requirements and to see these projects through start to finish. So the plan for today, in the next kind of half hour or 45 minutes at most, is I'm going to talk through the 10 individual website trends that we're seeing and we think you should be looking out for this year. I want to then give you some further resources that you can take away and kind of continue reading into these kind of topics. And then at the end, we'll have a time for Q&A. So if you've got any questions, please feel free just to pop them into the chat, and I'll then open the chat at the end and go through those. So just as we make a start, just as a bit of fun, I want to put some stats on screen and just ask you to guess the numbers which are missing in the blanks, okay? So the first one says there are approximately X number of websites on the internet, and of that number, only around X are actually active. So just using the chat, just put two numbers into the chat now. So how many websites do you think there are on the internet? And how many of those do you think are actually active? And by active, I mean they've been updated in the last month, okay? So let's put two numbers into the chat and I'll open up the chat window. Okay, so Kenny straight in with 50 billion. Wow, that's going high, okay? Anyone else, any numbers you want to throw in? I'm sure there's going to be lots of different ideas here. Okay, 35 billion, 25 million, 1 trillion. Wow, okay. This could be interesting. Okay, so the actual numbers through data that we're looking at is that there are 2 billion websites on the internet. Okay, so some might think that's a lot, and others obviously you are shooting way high. But of that 2 billion, only around 400 million are active. So they've been updated in the last month. Okay, just one more, just as we get going. Here's another stat. So a percentage of people said that web design was the #1 way they determine the credibility of a website. And website viewers spend a particular percentage of their time looking at the left half of your pages, okay? So again, in the chat, please, just pop two percentages side by side of what you think this would be. Okay, so we've got one here, so 20%, okay? And 85%, yeah, good guesses there. 80 and 60, okay, very good. 30 and 50, all right. There's some really close answers here, really close. I think you're really on point. Fantastic, thank you, everyone. Let me just reveal the answers. So 48% of people said that web design was the #1 way they determine the credibility of a business. Wow, okay. And website viewers spent 80% of their time looking at the left half of your page. Why bother with the right, eh? So we need to take those things into consideration. So thank you so much for getting involved in that. Just a bit of fun as we kind get going. But actually, it puts into perspective why we should be reviewing our websites regularly and following the trends and expectations of users if they apply to your particular business. So I'm going to get straight in then with the first trend as we start this webinar. And the first one is app-like experiences. Okay, so after seeing many shifts in the industry over 13 years, I and many others strongly believe that the smaller, experience-focused sites are the future of web design. We're seeing a growing number of front-end driven web experiences that are overblown from a design point of view, and that's just becoming more popular. So in essence, it's an app-like experience, but on a website. So if you're looking to completely stand out from the crowd, then this is the opportunity for you right now. The world has adopted the use of apps where interaction, animation, and dynamic experiences just become the norm. And the logical next step is to bring that experience and energy into your website. Now, the second trend that we're seeing is something called a progressive lead form. You might not have heard of this, so I've just got a visual to show you what I mean. So you can see, as many websites do, they have a lead form where you're gathering data from your user or customer. But this is a way to do it in bite-sized chunks and to drip feed content into your CRM. So on the left-hand side, the first visit from your user of your website just asks them for their name and email address, maybe to sign up to a newsletter, for example. Now, on the second visit, now that could be a returning visit, or it could be the next page they load, for example. We switch out that box for this second visit one, the one in the middle of the screenshot. And we now make it personalized. So we say, welcome back, and we use their name, and we ask for other bits of information, right? And then on the third visit, again, we can just go one step further. Now, a lead form is ultimately the main way in which we connect the business with your potential customers. And it's the start of that relationship. So encouraging visitors to fill out lead forms is always a challenge for many businesses. So really our thinking is, how can we increase the number of conversions coming through these kind of lead forms? And obviously one way to do it is to make use of a progressive lead form. However, if you need information that can't be fit into 2 lines, progressive lead forms are great, because it's just one place where you can have one question after another, and it's just succinct, okay? And it really encourages your customers to fill in the blanks. So this hopefully will work with your CRM. So some of you listening might say, well, we use Salesforce or HubSpot or Pipedrive or something. And a lot of those CMSs will have the ability for you to integrate a progressive lead form into your website. But if not, there are other options. So we could either develop something a bit more bespoke, where the CMS itself holds this data and drip feeds it through to your CRM. Or alternatively, I'd encourage you to have a look at a tool called Typeform, which actually allows you to build forms but break down the way that you gather data. Okay, so there's hopefully a couple of tips in there that you can take away, but it's a great way to increase the number of leads that come through your forms. On to number 3, and the number 3rd trend we're seeing is fewer images and videos in the hero section. So here's an example of our website that we recently launched late last year. And you can see that we haven't gone with the common approach of having a really large image or video in that hero section. Now, just in case you don't know, the hero section is the top section of a website that you would see before you start to scroll down and start reading through the rest of the content. Now, this year, many designers are opting to craft hero sections and landing pages that speak with design rather than relying on imagery, illustrations, or videos. Hero images give a big visual impact right off the bat, but sometimes eliminating the distraction of a full screen image that puts the focus more on style and content. Now, there are many examples of this, but the common themes are that they use layout, typography, color, and shape to communicate a strong and unique brand identity. Now, foregoing images also creates a bit of a mystery, right? Enticing visitors to find out what else lies beyond the hero section. This kind of trend can also be seen through the focus groups that we undertake with our clients. So many of our customers, users, and stakeholders often feed back into our focus groups that we run within our design phases that actually large imagery is sometimes a waste of space, and also can cause some confusion because they're not sure if there's content beneath the imagery. So actually there's a growing trend, and users' preferences, I guess, and expectations are certainly evolving with time. And this is something that we think you should be looking at on your website for this year. And the fourth trend is dynamic content. I'm just going to give you a quick example of what I mean by this. So I'll just play a really short video. It hasn't got any sounds, so it's just a visual for you to have a look at. So what you can see in this visual is that two users, Emma and Joanna, are served up a web page, but Emma sees one version of that web page and Joanna sees a completely different version of that web page. Now, as consumers, we want information that's relevant to us and presented in the most convenient and concise way. Websites that display dynamic content generally have the highest engagement and conversion rates. But what exactly is dynamic content? So this is information, data, imagery, video, telephone numbers, what have you, that are shown to users based on their geolocation or their specific behavior or interests. So to give you a really elementary example, if I were to browse your website from London, then it would be really nice to surface a London telephone number, a London address, and content around that location. Whereas if I browsed the same website from Cardiff, then it would be nice to see a Cardiff number, a local number. It'd be nice to see local imagery and local content. And this is just one simple way that you can implement dynamic content. Now, this kind of technology that sits behind this can also be used for A/B split testing. So if that's something that you're doing as part of your marketing strategy, then this is the kind of same tech. And if you're looking to implement this on your website, just to leave you with a top tip, I would have a look at the tool that I've just presented there, which is called Personise, and that ends YZE. And it'd be really good to have a look at that tool and see if you could plumb that into your websites to facilitate dynamic content. Now, the fifth trend is one that I'm hoping is not new to you. I hopefully didn't surprise anyone by saying page speed. But look, a slow website is like the worst enemy of your online business, okay? So on the technical side, page speed has become, a front of mind consideration for web developers this year. So Google's update last year meant that page speed is now at the forefront of its ranking algorithm. So to put that in easy terms, if your website is slow to load, it's going to rank lower than a website that is really quick to load. After all, Google want to provide the best user experience to their users. So why would they send traffic to a really slow website? So, that's one thing to consider. But also the other side of the coin is users' expectations, right? So users aren't going to hang around if your website takes, 10 seconds to load. Stats say that actually most people are willing to last or wait, should I say, 2 or 3 seconds. And after that time, 53% of users will actually abandon that loading process and go back, okay? So this is actually really important. Now, interestingly, I recently ran a poll on LinkedIn and I asked kind of people how long they would wait for a website to load until they gave up. And most people did actually say about 3 seconds, right? So the stats ring true. But also we had a few comments, which I thought were interesting, that actually it depends what you're waiting for, okay? So, if my wife was trying to load the Amazon website, she'll wait all day, right? Because she wants to be on the Amazon website to buy what she wants. And I know it doesn't take long to load, but I'm just stretching the point. Whereas if you're looking for something which is maybe less desirable, or you're actually happy to shop around, then actually you probably won't wait, and you'll go back to the Google search result page and you'll click on the next website. Okay, so really it's time to put this at the forefront of your marketing plan, speed up your website, and you can do that in a number of different ways. And then to leave you with a tip, what you want to do is benchmark your site. So use a tool like Google's Page Speed Insights or Google's Lighthouse tool, and that will rate your website and kind of rank it and give you then some suggestions on how you can improve it. Okay, so really important factor that you need to take seriously this year. Now, number sixth trend we're seeing is interactive fonts. Let me show you an actual visual of this, just to put it in perspective. So again, I'll play a video. It's got no sound, but it just shows you what I mean by this. Okay, so you can see this website for Dillinger TV. It's got 3 links on the homepage: directors, about, and news. And all it does is allow you to click on one of those 3. And when you put your mouse over it, the fonts change. Now, taking the use of text even further, some designers have been finding creative ways to make their text move and play with the user's mouse. Now, an easy way to make text interactive is by applying like a hover state, like you would when you hover over a button. It helps that it's now easier to create more elaborate effects using front-end frameworks than it used to be to try and write this out in like bespoke code. So technology has moved on to allow this to be far easier to implement. But it's important to keep legibility and accessibility in mind, as some people are distracted by moving things on the page. So this is not for everyone, and I think you need to look at this on a case-by-case basis. Now, the website that I've just shown in that example uses a font that changes weight when the cursor hovers over the text. So basically, when you put the mouse over the text, the font weight reduces, and that's just the way that they create that effect. Now, with all of these kind of trends, and some people might call them, gimmicks, I'm a real big believer that you should only adopt them when they add value to the user experience. So consider your business, your proposition, and your users. And if this would add value to what you're doing, then I definitely think it's a trend you should incorporate. But I would just have that caveat that it's, of course, not going to be for everyone. Now, number 7 is dark mode. So for those that don't know, dark mode is like a display setting which will invert all of the colors. So traditionally on an app, for example, it might have a white or a light gray background with then dark text. And what dark mode does is it detects the time of day or the light in the room, and it then would invert those colors. So you've got then a black background with white text. And it just makes it easier to read content on a phone or a device, especially when it's late at night, right? But actually, we're seeing this trend come through to websites now as well, not just apps and traditional software. Okay. Now, research is showing that over 82% of people use dark mode on their on their smart devices. So it's very popular there, and hence why it's then starting to filter through into websites. Now, from a visual point of view, it looks sleek, right? When the colors invert, it looks great. But there's also other benefits. So like on a mobile device, it saves your battery life, and there's been studies on that as well. So there's lots of things to consider. And the other part of this, I guess, is aiding accessibility, right? So for those who might be visually impaired, to allow them to toggle and contrast the colors automatically would be of great kind of advantage to them. So lots of kind of things to consider here with dark mode, but one which we're really encouraging our clients to kind of take on board this year because it's great for a number of different reasons. Okay, number 8, and this is surprising interactions. I'm going to just show a visual as to what I mean by a surprising interaction. So you can see on this website, there's a grid layout, and it's split into 4. And when you move your mouse over each of those segments, the colors change, the visual representation in the center changes, and it's just really eye-catching and it draws the user in. But this is all done on hover. And actually, when you don't hover over it, it's a very, very clean and crisp design. Now, from storytelling to animated effects that react to visitors' actions of your site, there's no better way to establish a sleek tone than using these sort of interactions. Now, in 2022, we're kind of predicting that we're going to see many web designers move towards this kind of style, whereby actually the design is incredibly minimalistic until the user puts their mouse over something to reveal the kind of full design. Now, this could be a bit of a game of hide and seek, I guess some people could say, but it's nice to have that initial look of a site, which it looks clean, really kind of clear and crisp. And then it allows the user to unveil more information as they navigate around and move their mouse around the screen. Now, in our opinion, this is one of the main purposes for interactions this year. So shifting from that kind of like more is more approach that some people take. Now, pages will become more and more minimalistic is the prediction, yet dynamic and smooth. And even when it comes to the spread of animation, the movements will be clean and aimed at consuming information easily. So I hope you agree that in that particular example, it's a great way to deliver content. So that's our 8th trend that we're seeing. Moving on to number 9. So we're nearly there now. This is customization and accessibility. Now, we know and understand straight off the bat that not all users are the same. So why on earth do we give them the same website and expect them to all have the same experience? This is why dynamic content that I mentioned earlier is so important, because you start to serve up content which is more relevant to that particular user. But this point takes it one step further and allows the user to start customizing other elements. So you can see here just a screenshot from the search engine DuckDuckGo, and it's got various settings. So it allows each user to change their settings. And this is not just from a visual point of view. So when I say visual, I'm talking like, allowing people to change fonts, font sizes, contrasts, etc. But it also asks like their opinion and kind of allows them to change things like their theme, different settings of how the search engine displays results, etc. And this is taking, dynamic content and personalization up to the next level. So this is, I guess, the topic of being accommodating to your users. Now, accessibility, if we just touch on that, that's obviously an ever more important element of web design. And really, our devices create more accommodations for users with visual or auditory impairments. But web design over the years has added multiple do this first concepts, like, you might have heard of mobile first or shift left on security. But actually, ultimately, accessibility needs to be integrated into the design process from the start, just like security and mobile compatibility. Now, web development is a holistic process where content and technical needs meet, and accessibility is at an equal footing with security, design, and content for getting your message to everyone. Okay. Now, these features tell your customers and users that actually you're thinking about their needs and desires. So sites that do stand out to your customers are those that you've designed intentionally to allow the user to amend their experience. So this is something we're seeing a lot more of at the moment. We think it's going to be a growing trend, but one that you should be looking to implement for sure this year if you haven't already. And the 10th trend for today is horizontal scrolling. Now, obviously, you'll be aware that most websites scroll, top to bottom. So I'm just talking allowing content to scroll left to right. Here's a screenshot of what we've done on our own website. And if I just point you specifically to the mouse cursor on that first block and it says drag. So what happens on our site is actually when we have content which is not following the traditional vertical scroll, we change the mouse cursor to the word drag to encourage the user to drag left to right. So you might say, well, actually, that might not be intuitive, but we're actually seeing a lot more people being comfortable with scrolling left to right. And that's driven because of the mobile usage that most people will use, right? So if you're browsing a website on a mobile, most content will allow you to swipe left and right. And that now is being incorporated into your desktop version of your website. Now, this is especially true for portfolio websites, catalogs, maps, and the like. So discovering projects and exploring cities and visiting online galleries is far more engaging with sideways navigation. So when it's done right, horizontal scrolling can make a website far more appealing, fun, and ultimately memorable. And that is really what we're trying to do, is create memorable sites. Now, our website, for example, is mainly used as a portfolio website. So with this in mind, we created horizontal scrolling experiences for lots of different pieces of content. So whether it's scrolling through guides or whether it's scrolling through blog posts, we incorporated it in those elements where we didn't want the page to become too long. Now, the fluid motion of different design elements creates a sense of progression, even when it's static. And this ultimately just drives the user to keep scrolling and stay on the site longer. So that's horizontal scrolling. I'm sure you've seen a lot of it, and we think it's going to continue being a growing trend. Now, I've reached the end of my top 10 trends for your website this year, but I just want to give a bit more content that you could take away. So after this session, I'm going to send you more content on the 22 must-haves for your website in 2022. This is a PDF document that we've put together based on a lot of research, talking to a lot of marketers about what they're doing at the moment and what the trends are. So it builds upon the content that I've delivered today. So you'll receive a copy of that PDF document shortly. And the other thing I wanted to offer today is a completely free website audit. So if you're maybe struggling with your website, or you're not sure which direction to take it in, or even maybe you're not sure which of these trends you should be applying to your particular site, then please do get in touch. We've got a very manual audit process whereby we look through your website, we move away kind of automated tools, and we look at you and your proposition and what you're trying to achieve, and then put some suggestions on the table for what you could do to elevate your website and move it forward. So if you'd like to claim that, please just go to the link on screen. You can request a free digital audit and one of our team will be in touch shortly. So that's enough from me for now. I'm going to move into a time of Q&A. So please feel free to pop some questions in the chat and I will do my very best to answer them. Just whilst you do, I'm going to open up the chat window to see what we've got. Okay. So I've got one here sent to me direct. I'll read it out for everyone. Okay, so it says, I was under the impression that long home pages were on trend, but from what you've said, this is changing. What would you advise we do to update our website? Okay, so I completely agree. Long websites were a trend, but I kind of feel that trend is gone. Okay, so there was a trend kind of a year or two ago, or even maybe longer, where people just had really, really long pages, specifically on the homepage, and the kind of purpose of that was to not distract people to go around your navigation, but for them to see all of the information on one page and just to basically keep scrolling. That really is kind of being turned on its head at the moment. Now, even though that's a trend, and I've talked about that today, I'm a big believer in not necessarily just following a trend for the sake of it. So you need to do what's right for you and your business. So I would advise you to install a tool called Hotjar, which can be installed on any website, and it'll allow you to track how far down the page people are scrolling. So it'll give you a heat map of that. And based on data, If people are not scrolling down particularly far, then I think that's your answer. You need to then redesign the page so it's far shorter. But actually, in your instance, if you find it's the other way, then I would also say that's fine. I think we should make data-driven decisions rather than just following trends. But yeah, great question. I think that's certainly something that Hotjar could help you with. Okay, looking back at the chat, I got one other sent direct here. Okay, so it says the animations that you've shown look very cool, but can this also be distracting for the customer? Okay, cool. So yeah, the animations do look cool, right? They look really sleek, and I feel like it would represent most businesses in a positive light. But in some instances, it's important to ask yourself whether the animation or micro animation is actually adding value, or whether it's kind of gimmicky. So like where on our website we changed the mouse to the word drag, that's helpful, right? Because it kind of says to the user, this content doesn't go down, it goes across, and you need to drag on your desktop mouse to actually see it. So I feel like animations and micro animations should aid the user experience and add value to the kind of energy of your website, and not just be there for like gimmicky purposes. So yeah, hopefully that kind of answers that. Great, just have a look back at the chat. So would you recommend different trends to different industries? Yes, I would. So I think this is where I feel like we need to understand each other's businesses are different, and your target audience is very different. So I talked earlier about interactive fonts. I don't necessarily think interactive fonts is right for everyone. It's definitely a trend, it's on trend at the moment and a growing trend, but it's not right for everyone, okay? So I definitely think that some of these trends will apply to you and your website, and others might not. So I think it's important to say that, but always be data driven, right? So, look at your data in analytics and Hotjar and any other tracking tool that you use, and try and tease out common threads, which will then hopefully give you a clearer picture as to which of these trends are right for you. Let's have another look. Okay, so with various customizations such as dark mode and other accessibility, where would be good positioning on the page for users to easily reference? Okay, good question. I think when it comes to accessibility, clearly there are a particular group of people that will take advantage of using that feature, and they need to know where to look. This shouldn't be something which is like hidden away in your footer. So I see loads of websites where, like, if you go into the footer in really small text, it says like accessibility, and it's like difficult to find. And then you click on that and it just gives you a whole massive page of kind of how to make your website accessible. I'll be honest, for me, that's just a big no-no. So in my opinion, the pinnacle of this is having the industry standard accessibility icon pinned to the bottom right of your website. So that's an icon which, for those that are needing those tools, will know straight away. They'll be familiar with it. And for me to pin it to that bottom right as you scroll down the page just makes sense, right? So that wherever you are on the site, you can always find that. So hopefully that helps there. And let me have a look at one other question maybe. So, okay, so how far would you take dynamic content? So would you serve different information for specific job titles if that was captured through a progressive lead form? Okay. This is going to come down probably to kind of time and resource, because when you get into dynamic content, you're going to go down a rabbit hole, and it could start to become particularly timely from a content and implementation point of view, especially if you've got lots of user groups. Okay, so just to put it out there, you'd maybe need to see if you've got capacity, internally. But actually, I think I would want to take it as far as possible, especially when it comes to job titles. So, for example, you could run a LinkedIn ads campaign targeting a particular job title, okay? And it could be really targeted to just that. And we drive them through to a landing page, which, is all around content directed at people with that kind of job title. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it would be to somehow gather their job title on the website. So whether that's through a standard inquiry form or through a progressive lead form. And then once we've gathered that data and we know that they've got X as a job title, then at that point, the website would have enough data to personalize the content and experience specifically for them. So there are a number of ways to go about doing that. And I think basically you're thinking absolutely on the right lines. Okay. So, I would, in essence, to answer the question in short, take it as far as you possibly can, because it will have significant benefits. Great. Okay. I think that's all the questions that I can see. If I've missed one, I'm really sorry. I'll go through the chat later. But yeah, thank you ever so much for getting involved this morning. And obviously, thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to this content. I really appreciate it. For now, just want to say, thank you for joining. I'll be in touch very soon with a copy of the slides and the recording and the other resources that I've offered today. And if we can be of any assistance with a website audit or anything else, then please get in touch. I'll be more than happy to hear from you. But for now, thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.